Hi, I'm Lara Wallace. Thanks so much for listening to Bass Capital Radio Podcast. I'm very excited today to have Mr. John Alexander, former teacher with the Putnam County School District. You have served and taught many of the students, many of the community members here in this county. So thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
And today we're going to be talking about the history of Putnam County. And the first thing that I like to do in all of my podcasts is ask, how did you end up in Putnam County?
Well, it was by sheer accident. I came here with my wife at the time to bring her to a interview at Mosley Elementary School as their music teacher. I just drove her here. And they asked me if I were interested in a position here in Palatka, and I didn't know if I wanted to or not, but I said, well, we'll see. Because I really was looking at a position in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I had planned to accept that. And but my mother lives in St. Augustine, and it's only she and I. And so I said, well, I don't know. Maybe I don't need to move so far away. So at the time, Mr. Phil Alvers was the principal at Mosley Elementary, and he told me about Browning Pierce and East Palatka Elementary School. Browning Pierce being at that time, white school. East Palatka Elementary was the black school. So I went over there, and I don't know, it just fell. It was as if it were meant to be. It just happened.
Just kind of there.
Yeah, and so next thing I knew, I was accepted the position of the music teacher at East Palatka Elementary and Brown and Pierce, because they were integrating at that time, and that was the way they were. That was their form of integration, using a music teacher as an itinerant between two schools, and a black teacher going to a white school, and so, and then a white physical education teacher going to a black school, and then a white school. So that was their form of integration.
Well, music speaks all languages, all races.
Yes.
So that's actually very brilliant. And PE, everybody's physical. So that actually makes a whole lot of sense if you think about it.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed it. It was just a new thing for me. It was a kind of a new adventure, and I really enjoyed it. Met so many kids who I know today. We're still close, and they make sure that I see them when we're out and about. And so that's how I got in Putnam County.
Well, I have a couple questions on that. So what year was it that you accepted?
1966.
1966. So that's when were you the first step as far as teachers for integration? That's incredible.
Yeah.
And was your intent always to be in the education system, or?
I know. I was just telling my great-grand the other day, I intended to be a judge. Then I went from that to maybe being a doctor, because I used to, when I was in third grade, if you would believe it, I used to give my grandmother her injections for diabetes when I was, as I said, third grade.
Oh, my goodness.
We would travel, go to New York and what have you, and I would give her shots.
Oh, my.
Because her sons, they'd run out of the room. My mother showed me how to give her insulin, and so I was giving shots, and checking her sugar and all that. And so I said, well, I think I'll become a doctor. And I don't know, once I arrived at college, then I said, well, no, I think I'll become a minister of music, because in the previous years, I had been taking piano lessons and organ lessons and playing for the church and all like that as a teenager. So I said, well, maybe I'll go into music instead of becoming a doctor or a judge. So I don't know. When you get in college, you're trying to decide what your major is going to be.
Right.
And so I said, well, I think I'll go into music. And that's how I became a music teacher.
Well, I'm thankful you made that transition, but Putnam County is thankful. We were walking up here and my husband saw you and he said, you taught me as a child. And so you really have had a great impact, but I'm just thinking about being in third grade. I probably run too from giving an injection.
I don't know why it didn't bother me, but I had seen my mother give her shots over the years, and she did it with ease, and so it didn't bother me. I just had to make sure that I had the right amount of insulin, and I'd put that rubber skin with the alcohol and just ease it in her arm.
Wow.
And I had to make sure that she had snacks and all that on the train and traveling to and fro from New York and Philadelphia and other places. And I just did it. I don't know, it seemed to come natural.
And now you're a music teacher, which is a doctor of other sorts, taking care of children and people in another way. Now, did you grow up in St. Augustine? You said you traveled, but St. Augustine was home for you.
That's right, exactly. I enjoyed traveling, and but yeah, I did grow up in St. Augustine. My father was killed in World War II, and so it was just my mother and I, and so that was just a really close relationship.
And understandable why you wouldn't want to go all the way to Indianapolis versus taking a position right next door, essentially. And that worked out wonderfully because it sounds like you were chauffeuring at the time for an interview and landed in a position that has really changed the course of your life and the community's life.
Yeah.
So,
and then I moved over to from James, because I went over from Brown and Pierce and East Palaca Elementary to James A. Long and Silver Lake Elementary as an itinerant. And I remained at Silver Lake because they put me at Silver Lake permanently, and instead of James A. Long and Silver Lake, I was at Silver Lake only. And I stayed there from 1967 to 2009.
The whole time.
Yeah.
It really was a permanent home.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
At Silver Lake Elementary, which became Kelly Smith Elementary.
Now, the school, so let me make sure I understand. So Brownie Pierce and East Palaca, that was the two separate schools during segregation. And it seems like a very short period of time you were there.
1 year.
And then you transferred over to Kelly Smith
and James A. Long.
And James A. Long. Okay, James A. Long. And then were the schools still integrating at that time, or was it over a year that they integrated?
It was slowly. James A. Long was a black school. And of course, Silver Lake was predominantly white. There were a few children from the Francis, who lived in the Francis area, that were black, that attended Silver Lake. And they were there, but it was predominantly a white school. And that was really an experience. I had to really work hard at that.
I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah.
How so?
Well, I had to I had to convince some of the white children that I did care about them, and I don't know, some of them, just one or two, not a whole lot, were convinced just because I was black I didn't care for them. And so I just made an effort to learn their relatives. I learned their names, who their aunts were, their cousins, their grandparents, and just to let them know that I cared for them just like just any student that I would have. And from that time on, even now, I know I know the children and their relatives, the extended families, and it's like that, as I said, now. And it seemed to convince them that, yeah, he cares for them. And of course, the way I interacted with them, I always had a real good relationship with my students, always have. And some of them now in their 60s. And, they remember from back in those days, and they will come up to me in Walmart or what have you. And I let them know, well, hey, I taught your grandparents or what have you.
Wow.
And it was just something I wanted them to feel that I cared for them. And I would go out in Barden and visit some of the kids. I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to be in Barden at that time.
Okay.
But the kids didn't care, and the people out there were very nice. And I would visit them and drive around in that area and let the kids know, yeah, even though we're not at school, I'm still concerned about your life and whatnot, even though we're not in the school.
That's amazing. And so that says to me at the time that the segregation when you were visiting was still strong in the community as
Oh, it
well.
was, yeah. But still, those same people, well, in the Francis area, uh, I gave some of their children piano lessons after school, or go to their homes after school, take them home from school in the afternoon, give them piano lessons at home, and then leave and go to another house because I did that a lot after school. God was just with me. I'm telling you, just taking kids home after school and
That's
giving them
already
lessons.
whether they're your kids or not.
Yeah,
Kids after school are wild.
yeah, and of course that couldn't happen now because of all the laws and whatnot. But you didn't have to do all that then. And if it was all right with their parents, that was, it was acceptable. So I did that a lot and traveled all around in the community giving piano lessons in the afternoons. And then sometimes the kids would be waiting for me on my steps for their piano lessons.
So you gave them in homes and at your home.
Yeah.
You open your doors as well.
Yeah, and gave lessons sometimes right after my last class at the school.
Have piano abilities will travel, right?
Yeah, yeah. For 50 cents or $1
Oh my goodness.
for 30 minutes. Isn't that something?
That is something. Well, you have seen some changes, I'm sure.
I have.
But I've got to know. So when you moved to Putnam County, where did you find a home?
Well, of course, we didn't, as you say, we didn't have a home, but there were some wonderful people back during those days who would help you out. For instance, even though I didn't work at their schools, Mr. Fred Brooks and his wife, Miss Zola Brooks, he was the principal at Central Academy High School.
Yes.
And his wife took us around and tried to find us lodging at various places. And we did find a room. There were some houses that would rent. Well, there were some families that would rent a room to a teacher.
Very specifically for teachers.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And so they had been doing that over the years, and we did that. Then we'd move from there. We found because we began having children, and we found other little apartments or a small home and moved there. after
Okay.
we had been living in rooms where people would let you stay with them in their home. So we did that for quite a bit. And the people were so nice. They would help you find babysitters and people to keep your children during the day. And there's just a close camaraderie that existed back during that time in the Black community.
Mm-hmm. That was something that before we started filming that you were talking about. I did not realize that so many families, we call it, the new term is Airbnb, where basically you go find a room to rent in somebody's house.
Mm-hmm.
But that was pretty much the norm where a teacher would stay with a family
Mm-hmm.
and rent a room.
Mm-hmm.
And that the community, Central Academy is one of the places that I think has so much rich history. And I'm very excited to be able to talk to other people who've been there, but that they would help you in a communal way. And I'd love to hear about what that looked like. Was it just the teaching community or the community in general that had that strong camaraderie? Because obviously, people
I,
would help.
I really think it was the community in general, but they certainly would help the teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, once at the beginning of each school year, they'd find out who the new teachers were, and they would introduce you around in the churches, and then they would have a teachers' ball.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that at Booker Auditorium there
Mm-hmm.
on 10th Street. They would have a teachers' ball there, and at that time, Abe Alexander he came here with me. In fact, we attended the same college.
He
And
taught me in band.
yeah, did he?
He did.
And so he would have his band, Abe and the House Rockers.
Mm-hmm.
They would
I love
play,
that.
yeah, they'd play at the teachers' ball, and the older teachers would have you as their guests at their table and have a setup for all the new teachers and food and drinks and whatnot, and you were accepted, and there was dancing and just camaraderie with all the people during that time. It was just great.
Oh, I can
And
envision that.
yeah, and all the older teachers from years back, they would be there, and it was just great.
I think about really I'm a very visual person. So as you're telling me this, I could
You're
just imagine. Oh,
visualizing
yeah,
it.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And it's wild to think how that I don't know if it's the perspective or the way that we treat teachers now is so much different.
it's
Uh,
totally different. I know
yeah.
they don't do that now.
No, I mean, it sounds like the teachers were really revered
They were.
as community leaders because really you're teaching the youth. You are guiding our future leaders. And now, I mean, it's just hard enough for teachers to get the support. They've got teachers out there teaching multiple classes that maybe they weren't prepared to teach. Where it sounds like when, in the 60s, 70s, the earlier eras, that was a very highly respected
It
role.
was in the black and white community, and they were very respectful to you. If they once they found out that you were a teacher, they were very respectful to you and accepting. And that's one thing that I enjoyed about Palatka during that time. And I just saw even the sororities and fraternities they would have during the holidays, the Alpha Ball, the Sigma Ball. They had organizations called the Young Men Progressive Club that would invite you to attend their gatherings during the holidays. And all of this, and you'd be in your best. Uh, you had at least 3 or 4 balls to attend during the holidays.
Wow.
It was it was amazing.
I just can't even, I don't know. And this is my lack of education. So I'm so thankful that I've got people here with knowledge. I don't, I don't think I can recall a sorority or fraternity locally unless it's like a small chapter. They don't, it's not quite the same as it was then, you
And
know?
then during the year, the sororities or fraternities would uh, have a certain time of the month when they would a turnout, for lack of a better term, at your church, and all the members of that sorority would meet at your church, and they would have the Greek medley hymns that would be played, and they would stand when the medley was played, uh, and
Amazing.
they did that at most of the churches that the members of the sorority attended, and that was done for years and years, especially while the older sorority members were alive. They
Hmm.
kept that tradition all in the community. I
Wow.
was very much impressed. And that was something that happened when we were in college.
Okay.
They would, especially I graduated from Bethune-Cookman College, and Bethune-Cookman University now, and the sororities and fraternities would have their special programs. And of course, the Greek medleys would be played at the end of the program, and various members would stand when their medley was played. And I was always impressed in college. And then I saw that continued here in Palatka. I said,
Hmm.
boy, this is great.
I can just see that whole excitement and pride that you have in
Mm-hmm.
the education and the
Mm-hmm.
uh, to your point camaraderie that you
Mm-hmm.
felt, and I'm sure that that was inspiring to think of your students becoming one of those
Sure.
members.
Mm-hmm.
And I can just, I wish I could see that happening now.
Yeah.
How long do you feel like it took when you're talking about the students integrating, um, to have that shift for them to move into adulthood and all be integrated together?
I don't know. It took a while, and a lot of that kind of vanished because people moved out in various parts of the community,
Hmm.
wherein before we all lived on in the north
Right.
side in the same area. And I don't know, as people lost communication and teaching at various schools and not in the same school as it was in the past,
Hmm.
a lot of that communication uh, kind of dwindled and finally didn't exist as much as far as the sororities. And well, some of the sororities, they still communicate now. They
Hmm.
still have their uh, togetherness and whatnot, but a lot of that closeness that existed back during the time that I was referring to kind of over the years dwindled, and as various people passed away, that just didn't exist, and so many things have changed.
I think I was talking to Miss Connie Snyder, Belton Snyder, and she was
Oh,
saying times were different, and I think that that is a very true statement. How much you're talking about seems to not exist today, and that was really where the question I was going with was when we were talking about the integration. It does seem that those strong traditions seem to shift a little bit. You
sure,
know, we have other traditions, and you
sure.
know, the football game is always something very exciting for this community. But I don't think we really see the same type of community and camaraderie
I don't
that
think
you
so.
did.
The togetherness that existed back during that time, I don't think it exists now. People just don't feel the same way.
I
So
I hope that's something that we can breathe life back into, though.
it would be
As a
good.
community member, you know, you and I, while we may not have gone to school together, we both live and work and play in the same
Sure.
community. So that can be what, you know, binds us and brings us together.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things that you feel like were maybe a challenge in teaching during that time?
I don't know. I can't think of many things that were challenging. I just tried to do what was right and how to behave and what to do and how to teach as a professional and as being a good teacher. I wanted to bring the best to the children. I wanted them to experience the best, no matter what race they were a member of. I wanted them to know about composers. I wanted them to square dance and to enjoy square dancing. And, playing instruments, reading the music.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted all that for the kids, no matter what race. I didn't care about that. And so I, I just worked really hard at having that be a part of my curriculum. There were just certain things I wanted those kids to know and appreciate and enjoy. Appreciate good music. We talked about Beethoven and Bach and all and Mozart, and the kids loved it.
I was going to ask, were they receptive?
Oh yeah, the kids, and to bring out their artistic ability, we would draw those composers. Oh, some of the
I bet
kids.
that was good.
I still have the drawings of some of the kids that they did way back when. And in fact, I've shown some of the drawings to the kids whose parents were in my class, showed them things that their parents drew.
Oh my goodness, how
Yeah.
amazing.
Oh, they loved it. They convinced some of them I gave to them or made copies of them, and I kept the original. But no, the children love knowing about Mozart and knowing about Beethoven and his not being able to hear. And that was just something I wanted the kids to know. And when we began preaching, I'm sorry, when we began square dancing, I would tell the kids in a joking way, I said, look, plaid kids can dance with striped kids, or green kids can square dance with purple kids, or polka dot kids can dance with striped kids. I said, so I want you, when you get ready to choose your partner, just remember that. Don't worry about whether you're striped or polka dot. Just choose a partner.
I love that you removed the racial part of it and did something patterns and colors.
And the kids would laugh. They'd say, Mr. Alexander, you're so silly. They'd say it like that. And then they'd go on and choose their partners and they wouldn't care.
I think that's beautiful that you were able to take a generation that grew up seeing a divide and through music and dance just set that aside.
Oh, yeah, sure. Acting out stories, playing the parts of animals or the farmer in the dell and the farmer takes a wife, the farmer takes a cow or whatever. The kid would play the part. Didn't matter who the kid was or what race they were. They just enjoyed it and showing their imagination and dramatizing stories. The kids just loved it. And I loved it too.
What is not to love about that, especially because that's a youthful age where their imaginations are wild and how much fun that must be. I mean, I recall doing things like that in elementary school, and you don't, and unless you're taught to see a difference, you just see another person.
Exactly.
And you really fostered that environment. And I got to know, square dancing is a very specific, like the waltz or the polka. What was it with square dancing that?
I don't know. I really wanted to do square dancing because the kids from Barton identified with it, but heck, the kids from the north side loved it too. And it didn't matter where you were from. It was just enjoying doing the dance and doing the do-si-do and swinging your partner. And then we did the Virginia Reel, and there were about 3 or 4 basic square dances that we did in my class. Not all at the same time, but at various times of the year. Shoot, those kids loved it. And of course, when the teacher would come to pick up their class, they'd join in and square dance with the kids too, or whatever we were doing. They'd come right in and join it. Some of the teachers did, and they enjoyed it. And then the kids, and they liked seeing their teacher in that.
Oh yeah. Anytime I think as a child, I think back to teachers doing some skits on the stage, or even as an adult watching my children watch their teachers just be a person, because there's a respect that you have for your teacher, kind of like a parent. At least you hope that that's how your children treat their teachers. But to see them just be silly or fun or be people and not so buttoned up.
And now that we talk about it, it brings to mind, we used to, every year we had a Christmas show, and we would have I'd ask the teachers and the principals to join in the show. And I can remember Ken Eccles at one time was Joseph, and I can't remember who Mary was. We just have all the teachers join in, and they were bringing, in this particular play, they were bringing gifts to Mary and Joseph, and teachers were bringing gifts along with the kids, and their gift maybe was the tambourine or the drum, and they would come dancing in the cafeteria and dance all the way up to the manger and present the tambourine or the drum to the baby Jesus. And I had teachers acting out those things. I can remember Miss Nancy Warwick, she was one of them, and different other teachers, and present these gifts to the baby Jesus. The kids loved it. They loved seeing their teachers do those things.
Be people.
Yeah, and then we would have the teachers who would sing in a trio or a quintet or what have you, along with the kids as we sang various Christmas carols. Alice Riles and many other teachers, they just joined in, and Joyce Mills. I'm just thinking of people off the top of my head who did that, and they enjoyed it. So we just did all kind of things, especially at Kelly Smith.
That's so funny, because that was the thought that I had, is like you were there. Was that something that seemed very special to that school, or do you?
They're just things that I dreamed up, and so they did them.
I love that.
As long as I suggested it. I mean, it was just a flexible bunch of people,
right?
And great principals who would join in and allow us to do these things. And as long as you had it very well organized and in a disciplined manner, the kids and the principals and teachers would join in with the children, and the parents seemed to enjoy it.
Did it stay that way throughout
the whole time I was there?
Maybe you were the secret to that success there. I love that.
I just enjoyed doing it, and I like having everyone participate: parents, children, teachers, administrators joining in and presenting finished product for the kids and the audience to enjoy.
A participatory event, if you will.
Yeah.
As you were talking, I kept trying to put myself there and envision what the room must have felt like, and the excitement of the children and the families, and like going to watch a good play where it doesn't matter what age you are, you just enjoy that. How amazing would it be for us to have a square dance in the community, for us to bring that back and have the band come and play, and maybe students who used to square dance with you in class
That's right.
come and do that. That would be amazing.
Mm.
I'm just putting an idea out there. If anybody wants to take that idea, I would love that. I will come.
It's a great thing.
Yeah, I did not know that there were so many. And again, my ignorance is, I guess, come into play here. I did not know there were so many types of square dances.
Yeah, and we did that at Kelly Smith, and I don't know what they did at the other schools, but
They could be square dancing 6 other different ones, right?
they would enjoy it so much. And now I don't know that they even have music is offered as much in the schools as they used to.
Mhm.
And there was Steve Hunt, who was the choral director at the high school. He was great at doing things like that. And we would exchange programs. He would come to Kelly Smith, bring the kids from James A. Long when he was teaching there. And I would take my kids over at James A. Long and perform there. And that's just those things that we did.
Mm-hmm.
David Vizzetti would bring his instruments out and demonstrate them for the children in my classes. And other band directors did that also. And we just, that's just a great way for children to learn.
Oh, yeah. I growing up, always, I'm not a very great audible learner. I until music comes into it, and I would make up like rhymes in my head to memorize things.
Sure.
And so when I was teaching the kids, and it was very natural, and I think children naturally are drawn to that kind of thing.
They are.
Where I was trying to get the kids to memorize their home address.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd make it a little rhyme, make it a
Sure.
little song. But it was not something that I had to like go out and seek that knowledge. It was just ingrained in you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's always weird to me when I run into someone who says, "Oh, I don't listen to music." Just like,
how?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Is that
like,
possible?
How do you not listen to music?
Yeah.
You just silence. That's so foreign to me. And you really create magic in that moment. And
Sure
it really
you do.
does surpass race, gender, religion, all of that.
Doesn't even enter into the equation. The kids just love it.
And in some ways, there are parallels. If had you gone into medicine, obviously there was a time of segregation, but
Mm-hmm.
later on you would be treating all races, genders.
Mm-hmm.
You were just healing them in a different way.
Maybe so. I think so. Well, God had his plan in it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes things are just destined to happen.
I think you were destined to be here for sure.
Well, I've learned a lot being here in Palatka, and I've enjoyed it. And so what you're saying about destiny, maybe that's true.
Well, share with me some of the things that you have learned, or I mean, obviously you created experiences for children and families in this community, but what are some of the teaching galas, were some of the experiences? Share with me some things that you've picked up from Palatka.
Well, I just enjoyed the camaraderie here and people being friendly with one another, and that old hometown feeling, down home feeling that seems to exist here. I was really surprised. I had a 1959 Chevy from college, and I stopped at, I think it was Tom Crabtree at the foot of the bridge. It used to be at the foot of the bridge.
Yes, sir.
And gas was $5. I would fill the tank up with $5. And
barely get a gallon for that now.
Yeah. And one morning my car wouldn't start, and I lived on 16th Street.
Okay.
And so I called him up and told him, and he said, "Okay, I'll be right over." And he came over, and he worked out in my driveway, and he worked and he worked. And he got that old Chevy started. Well, I was really surprised. I said, well, he's going to come over here on 16th Street and get my car started. I'm really surprised at that. And I found that to be the case here in Palatka. People just would help you out, especially if they knew you and you had a good reputation or whatever, or as a teacher, or just because they knew you. And they would come over to your home, and I'm sure they did that to many other people in the community, no matter what their positions were. And I like that feeling here in Palatka, and it still kind of exists. It's just a down home, caring, uh, friendliness that exists here that I don't find in many other places.
I do agree with that. I after hearing, some of your stories and other stories, I do believe that the sense of togetherness and community is definitely different than when you first came to Palatka, and understandably, as we start to integrate, that community becomes more spread.
Sure.
But I do believe that there's something so special about Putnam County
I think
that is, I mean, others from out of town see it. There's groups on Facebook where people come together and help total strangers. Last week we had a teacher through the AVID program out at QI Roberts who went to church with a family, and there's a little boy who had a need for a service dog. And she took that project and took it back to her students, and they all were able to help do an event this past weekend, to raise money for the service dog. But the students were excited. Where I feel like if you were in a bigger city or maybe even a different city and you go to church with somebody and you bring home or bring an idea back, how often do you see a community rally together like that? And we've rallied together for a number of reasons. Whether it be to honor the Blue Crab Festival or the Azalea Festival or to help a family in need. So I do believe that the ability to have what was there before still exists.
I think so.
I just think it takes all of us recognizing that that though the internet has allowed us and the electronics and things like that have allowed us to branch out further, that there's still something about being in a community that is very special. So I truly believe that as long as we remember that we're part of a community, that we can bring back that togetherness. That I think, while it's never going to be how it was, we can make it something different and just as good. And a lot of people from out of town have made the comment that where they're from, they don't see the kind of community that we have here. And it's really neat to grow up with people and your neighbors, to know them and be able to help them if somebody, has a broke down truck, or, if you see somebody on the side of the highway, or maybe a family who's been hit by a tragedy or needs help. It really is. Putnam County is very special in that way.
Yeah, but you still have to be so careful. I mean, these are just different times. You just have to be careful.
Have to use wisdom and be mindful when you help people. That's a very, very valid point. Unfortunately, things are dangerous everywhere, but you gotta use wisdom when going into things.
People have such a different mindset these days. They're so different from back then. But things have changed, but there's still some good things that exist.
I hope one of those good things can be, I really do want somebody to put a square dance on and and I feel like you would be a fantastic advisor to whoever.
I love it. I love it.
There's a lot of exciting things happening in Putnam County, growth in a good way, I truly believe. And I really love seeing the businesses downtown start to come back to life. I can only imagine what it was like when it was thriving at the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if you may spend a lot of time downtown, or sounds like you spent a lot of time with music. And
Yeah. I was just all over everywhere. And, you know, whether it was downtown or at home, and of course, in my church, my little church, St. Mary's Episcopal Church, even though it's real small, we spent a lot of time there, and there was a closeness and camaraderie there in that church. And the oddest thing about that was, it it's a it was a small little church, and it was predominantly black, but we still had white members. And it was like a best little kept secret, I guess, in town. In fact, your dad came there one time.
I know, I was going to mention.
But that was before, but before then, before he visited, there was just that closeness and that camaraderie. And we had white members, and it was just other members. You didn't think about what color a person was. And of course, sometimes our priest was black. Sometimes our priest was white.
Yeah. Oh, I grew up Episcopalian. And I do remember, I guess, I think the experience really is based on how maybe you were raised. And there are places that do transcend that, if you will. But I grew up and I kind of had the reversal where we were predominantly white church, but we did have some African American attendees, and that it really was something that you didn't think about in that aspect. We're all going to church, and you're right, a best kept little secret, because I thought Saint John's and Saint Mark's were the Episcopal churches.
Well, when I came here, it's the craziest thing. In my interview at the school board office, I happened to mention, I said, do you know of any Episcopal churches here in town? And they say, yeah, it's St. Mark's Episcopal Church over there on Main Street. They didn't mention St. Mary's on St. John's Avenue. And so they sent me there, and we went to Mass there. And when we walked in, I said, oh my gosh, everybody in here is white. We were thinking, when we entered in the church and we sat in the rear of the church, and we didn't take communion that particular Sunday because we weren't sure. And so anyway, after service was over, the priest and some members came over and said, why didn't you take communion? And we said, well, we didn't know. And so then after attending St. Mark's for a while, some members in the black community came to us and said that they need a organist over at St. Mary's Episcopal Church. I says, I didn't even know St. Mary's existed. And so we went over there, and the organist was getting ready to retire, Mr. Wilbur Belton. In fact, Mr. Belton is featured on one of our murals, the Belton Syncopators on St. John's Avenue. And he is the pianist, because it was his family that was the famous Belton Syncopators that were friends with Duke Ellington and Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald, and all of those people. Oh, wow. And so he was friends with those, and he was getting ready to retire from St. Mary's as the organist. So I went there, and the first Sunday I played, I found out that I was going to be attempting to play a pump organ. Oh. I'd never played a pump
I have
organ
not done that
before,
either.
just this, with foot pedals and the manuals. But my gosh, you had to keep the air going in the organ, and you did that with your knees, pushing in and out while you were trying to play. It was quite an
Well,
experience.
I bet. I have a hard time fathoming doing stick shift, like
Yeah.
driving a stick shift. That's the next level. I also grew up playing piano and
Yeah,
never quite wrapped my mind around a pump organ, like how
that's an
this is already
experience.
enough than putting in the foot pedals, but doing
Yeah,
that.
exactly like that, pumping in and out, in and out. It was quite an experience, and so we did that for a while, and then finally, St. Mark's Episcopal Church priest, Father uh, Bob March, helped us get an organ at St. Mary's. And so, yeah, and they brought over a Hammond organ, and I could play the regular organ there. But
What a relief.
yeah, but it was an
Oh,
experience,
yeah.
quite an experience, and I never even thought I'd run into something like that.
Right? Life really is just a series of experiences. It's about what you do with them.
It is. You're
Absolutely.
exactly right.
Well, I cannot tell you again with my vivid imagination how much fun I've had talking about the things that you've seen and the experiences that not only you've had but that you've given to the children, generations of children in this community. And
Hmm.
from a local, just thank you for coming and investing in our community and in our
Oh,
youth.
it's been an experience, and I've enjoyed it. I prefer Palatka over my hometown because of that feeling, that hometown, down home feeling that
Mhm.
I feel here in Palatka.
I couldn't put it any other way myself if I
Yeah.
tried to. So I do hope that we will be able to have another conversation about some other things that maybe come to your mind after this. I think that you've got a lifetime of experience locked away up there, and there's so many more things to be discussed. But I would again, third time's a charm. Maybe let's do a square dance, and you can be the advisor to that. We'll
Well,
have to
I'd
figure that
enjoy it.
out. Absolutely. Well, Mr. Alexander, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
Thank you for your commitment to this community.
Thank you
And
for asking me.
oh, it's my pleasure. And we hope to see you on the next episode of the Bass Capital Radio podcast.